I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. That's a different speech, I'm sorry. Listen, our guest today was arranged by Jim Dickert, and Jim thought that since Rob and I did a lot of business together, maybe he'd like me to introduce Rob, and that's a distinct pleasure for me to do so. First, let me just say that the Times News is absolutely the best source of local news and information. I mean, I can't imagine not having a community having a community without a local newspaper. So that's just where I stand on that. If you're relying on your Good Time Facebook buddy for information, you might be getting it all wrong. Okay, who here's a Merle Haggard fan? Okay, then what town do you associate with Merle Haggard? Bakersfield, California. That's Rob's hometown. And if you badmouth Merle, you're walking on the fighting side of Rob. Okay, so Rob is from Bakersfield, California. He's married to Anna. Anna is a pickleball ambassador. And if I would just say Anna was an enthusiast for pickleball, that's probably too mild. But and they lived in Kingsport. Rob used to be the editor of the Bristol Herald Courier, and then he came to us in March of 2021 as the Times News editorial. Rob has been a professional journalist for more than 30 years. He has won several awards in the journalism field. He's worked in other towns, including Frederick, Maryland, York, Pennsylvania, and his hometown of Bakersfield. The Times News recently received an award for its project on the Meth Mountain. If y'all remember that series, I read through that. It was excellent reporting. And the Times News won General Excellence Awards by the Tennessee Press Association's annual contest. Other career highlights include coverage of the space shuttle landings at Edwards Air Force Base, a 2-week assignment to the former Soviet Union, coverage of the 1994 Northridge, California earthquake, and the Amerithrax saga in Frederick, Maryland. I'll have to hear about that. But listen, mayors and editors don't always get along, but we do have a relationship based on understanding each other's role and mutual respect, and it is a pleasure to welcome Rob Walters.
Wow, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here this afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I do appreciate it. And the Amerithrax saga, that's if you remember after the 9/11 attacks, anthrax somehow made its way out of Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland. And there was a scientist by the name of Bruce Ivins who the FBI ultimately decided was responsible for that breach of, he lived across the street from the fort, and it turned out all he was doing was walking out, taking it out, walking across the street, going home with the anthrax. We had filed a FOIA request when I was at the newspaper in Frederick, Freedom of Information Act request for all the biological mishap reports for that year of the breach, and that includes such things as monkey bites and needle pricks. Fort Detrick, in case you didn't know, is where they do a lot of the biological testing, and it's not biological warfare, but they do testing and research in case there is something, a plague or anthrax does get out to the community, how we would attack it and deal with it. So that's a little bit about that. Bruce Ivins, the scientist, ultimately committed suicide when he found out that he was the target of the investigation. 5 people did die during those anthrax attacks, going back a few years. So it was a pretty big deal back then. Yes, I do. I'm the managing editor now for the Times News. The Times News has 2 daily newspapers. The one here in Johnson City, one here in Kingsport, the other's in Johnson City. There's some weeklies. There's one in Bristol. There's one in Irwin, Mountain City, and Jonesboro. Those are the 6 newspapers that make up the Six Rivers Media. Six Rivers Media is family owned by the Rao family. Anybody know David or Alan? Yeah, good number of you. Great family, great family. Having a family-owned newspaper in your community is extremely rare, and they're disappearing a lot. I've worked for a couple. My hometown newspaper was family-owned when I worked there. It sold off. Frederick, when I worked there, was family, 4th generation family-owned. It sold to Ogden News Group, and the Rao family. So you're very fortunate to have a family-owned newspaper. Alan Rao is our CEO. Alan's a great guy. He's on campus. He's in town. He's active in the community. And so if you haven't met Alan, find an opportunity to do that. He cares deeply about Kingsport, all things Kingsport. We have a new publisher. His name is Ron Waite. He started on March 20th. And Ron is the publisher and chief operating officer for Six Rivers Media. He couldn't make it today. He was invited, but I know he'll catch up. Has a lot of challenges on his plate, and I think that's what you want to hear. A little bit about what we're going through and what's going on at Six Rivers Media. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is that we're not going away. So if you hear that out there, it's not happening. Alan has a long view for 20 years down the road. Will the paper look the same in 20 years? Probably not. Probably not. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do believe in 20 years there'll be some sort of paper presence. But we are veering toward a new course, and that's digital. But the newspaper's not going away, and we don't have any plans for it to go away. But we do need to recognize that digital is our future. So we're a little bit behind a lot of newspapers in the country. We just put up a paywall on our website in August. When I worked in Frederick 10 years ago, we put up a paywall. So we're a little bit behind. But newspapers hurt themselves over the years by when they put up websites, they're giving away the content. They're making the legacy product users pay for it. And then if you're on the internet, you got it for free. Not a great business model. So we put up a paywall. So now, without the paywall, we were saying our content wasn't worth anything. We didn't put any value on our content. Well, that's not right. It's valuable. In fact, did you know in communities where there's not a local newspaper that your taxes go up? Yeah. Do you know that, Mayor? So that's, it's the important. There are news deserts coming up across, they're popping up everywhere. I'm concerned about Southwest Virginia becoming a news desert. We're getting, we have a Bristol Now website that's free, and our page views on that have grown 200% month over month over the last 2 months. And most of those users are coming from Southwest Virginia. The Bristol Herald Courier, where I used to work, is owned by Lee Corporation. They've contracted, their footprint is shrinking, their coverage area is shrinking, and I believe a lot of those folks are coming to the Bristol Now website in search of news out of Southwest Virginia. So it's interesting to see that trend. At first it was 100%, I think January, February, then February, March, 208% growth page views on the free website. So that's kind of interesting to me. Newspapers matter. They still matter. A recent study by newspapers.org, was a survey, I believe, about 5,000 people across 9 different census districts, and they found that the results of that were 218 million Americans access their local news from newspapers every month. So there's still healthy readership out there. 79% of users say they want to stay informed with their cities and their communities. And that the survey found that communities with newspapers did better during the COVID-19 pandemic than communities without. As I mentioned, taxes typically are higher without newspapers, in communities without newspapers. Rural areas are more reliant on newspapers than urban areas. 74% of Americans believe that it's important to have a community newspaper. 66% of voters in local elections are newspaper readers. So there's a number of reasons why we're relevant. It's still important. Believe it or not, 78% of people who read the newspaper are younger than 65. So what you're hearing that young people don't read the newspaper, not quite true. So we're still relevant. We're not going away. Our mission is to help. Our mission as a company, Six Rivers Media, is to help the community by keeping everyone informed. We have my newsroom. The reporters have 3 overarching goals: get it right the first time, break the kind of news that other people follow, and tell great stories. And everything they do should touch upon each one of those goals, if you think about it. So, and we're going out there. We're not. We cover city council meetings. That's important, but we also look to uncover the news. And you referenced Meth Mountain, and that's an example of where we went out and really tried to get ahead of the story. And where's the story going next? What's next? So it was a 4-day series where we identified the problem. We talked about the problem through human elements, real people, on the record accounts, not unnamed sources. On the record accounts gave strength and credibility to that project. And then the last day of the series, we explored possible solutions. Of course, there's a lot of money, a lot of it coming in from the settlement money, the opioid Baby Joe settlement money, for the regional rehab center. Boy, you'd think that'd be easy. Just open the doors, bring people in. But it's not, is it? There are a lot of, it's more complicated than that. So we explored that, we explained that. So that's an example of kind of uncovering the news. A few months ago in October, we did a series called Lost and Loaded, where we used the power of public information requests to dislodge lost and stolen weapons reports from 8 different police agencies on both sides of the state line. We found that there were 386 reported lost or stolen weapons over a 12-month period. Only 16% recovered. Law enforcement officials in every agency told us that's a big deal to them. That's concerning. That there are that many lost or stolen weapons out on the streets. Then we had a fun story after that published. A gentleman down in Greene County called us up and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. I read your series, and Greene County Sheriff's deputies just came to my door and returned some weapons to me that were lost. I reported lost 30 years ago." So that was kind of so we made a front page story out of that too. So there's that. All right. Hey, I want to share some breaking news with you while I'm here. Next week we're going to launch, on Wednesday we're going to launch an outdoor newsletter. And we're doing that because that is a tool to help us convert people to become digital subscribers. We need to grow the digital subscription. And so this is a strategy that a lot of newspapers are doing, a lot of success with newsletters. People opt in, they'll be sponsored. We thought outdoors is a good place to start for our initial newsletter. And so watch for that. There'll be a story in Wednesday's newspaper about it. And you're going to start hearing a lot about that. We'll probably have some other newsletters down the line, real estate, tourism, that sort of thing. Again, these are tools to help us attract digital subscribers. There's that. Talk about the paywall, Lost and Loaded. We're working on an ebook. Anybody know who Kenny Wagner is? All right. Yeah. Rick Wagner is one of our reporters, and he turns out he's a distant cousin of Kenny Wagner. Kenny Wagner was an outlaw, very well known, kind of a gentleman, a bit of a rogue, a ladies' man, And when I came to Kingsport, one of the first things I did was I asked Rick to submit a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI, and we were able to get our hands loose on about 800 pages of Kenny Wagner's FBI file. So we did a project called Desperado, 2-day project, talked about him, several stories, and it resonated with people. It hit home with people. I didn't anticipate the reaction to that. We had so many phone calls from people who were like, oh, I remember Kenny Wagner, or I remember hearing stories about Kenny Wagner. Some people still met him once, and this or that. So Rick has been working on an ebook to follow up to his project. So watch out for that. We're working on our first ebook, and it'll be all about Kenny Wagner. Kenny Wagner broke out of jail, several jails. He shot and killed people, but everybody loved him for some reason. So watch out for that. A little bit, some more breaking news. In January of 2019, there was an explosion at the ammunitions plant, Holston Valley. Everybody remember that? So we have been working, or we've been trying to get information from the Army, an after-action report about that explosion. We've filed multiple records requests that they've been denied. The first time they acknowledged, yes, the record request, but we're not going to give it to you, etc. Earlier today, we filed an administrative appeal to the Army saying that they didn't do their due diligence in searching for those records, the after-action report following that explosion. The first time they responded to us, they said, yes, we have such records, we're not giving to you. The second time they said, the response came from a brigadier general who said, no records exist, period. And so we're appealing that, saying they didn't do a good enough search, because the first time they told us that, yes, we have the records. So anyway, we're doing that. We believe it's important for people who live in and around basically a bomb factory to know what's going on. When something blows up, what happens, what lessons were learned, what is the government, what's the Army doing to keep the public safe? That's the value of a community newspaper. We're the watchdogs. We're out there keeping an eye on those things. I can tell you that I have emailed the mayor after hours saying, we won't go into specifics, but saying, can you nudge the police department? This is pretty important. We need to get this information out. And so, we'll do that. So I'm going to pause here because I see the clock back there. Who has questions? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of exodus of your longtime reporters going to work for the government. Talk to us about recruitment and retention of your reporters and the pool of employees out there that you can recruit.
Yeah, we're not recruiting right now. And the people who left under their own steam. About what I could say about that. We still have Matthew Lane went to work for the city, works for the mayor, and almost daily contact with Matthew. He's a great guy. He's great. I think he just wanted to put himself and the family first. And look, there's uncertainty in the newsroom in this business. The reporters, they look out there and they see they're aware of industry trends, that there's downsizing that goes on. We have not touched the reporting firepower. Six Rivers Media still has the most reporting firepower of any news organization in the region, period. Nobody can match us. And so, yeah, that's what I can say about that.
This is really a